question for you, because like I was going through the two stories, in the New Testament, and like what their kind of theme and their moral message was. I'd be curious to know what you think it is, the nativity story in the Quran. Like what I'm sure lots of Muslims have different ideas on that, but like what is your take on that? Look at that from a story perspective.
All right, so this will allow me to bring in the other thing I gave the Huffington Post thing. But so let's talk about what it means and then what it means practically for Muslims, because it literally changed the history of the world, changed the history of Islam, right? So on a theological level, there's centuries of Muslims going, what are the deeper meanings of all of this, right? The pivotal thing is that these people, Mary, Zechariah, John the Baptist, Jesus, are seen as a special group of people, right? They're called the family of Imran, the descendants of Moses and Aaron, right? They're of the tribe of Moses and Aaron, the family of Imran. So they're seen as inherently very holy people that are not like other people, right? And so this tells us that, because it's important theological difference. The Prophet Muhammad, remember how the story goes. He is born and Satan comes and touches his heart like touches everybody's heart, right? He has to have the heart cleansed, right? He isn't born immaculately like both Jesus and Mary, right? Okay. So
right, because he doesn't cry when he's born too, right? In the Quran.
The Prophet Muhammad is born like a normal child. He has a father and a mother, and he cries, and then later the angel has to clean it out of his heart because But whereas Mary and Jesus didn't have that experience, right? So they're not like other people, right? So there's this otherworldliness, and it's very important because Islam is very focused on the humanity of the Prophet Muhammad, and it's focused on the humanity of Jesus, right? This is our major theological difference with our Christian friends. We do not see him in any way, shape, form divine, and we don't believe he wanted to be claimed to be divine, right? That this is something that was projected onto him that he would have rejected, right? That's a theological belief. But what is important is, even though there's lots of miracle stories in Islamic tradition around the Prophet Muhammad, lots of miracle stories, right? The Quran doesn't really have any. There's a couple of verses you could think refer. There's two verses that there is a clear reference in the Quran to the one miracle, which is that the night journey, which is the Prophet is taken from Mecca to Jerusalem, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and goes up to heaven. There's a reference in that in the chapter called the Children of Israel, where he's taken to the farthest mosque, which literally is Al-Aqsa, because it is farthest in the sense that it is the most physically distant place of worship from Mecca to Jerusalem, right? But it's also an interdimensional. Muslims see the Haram, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, as an interdimensional portal to paradise, to heaven. And so it literally is the farthest, as it takes you all the way to the throne of God. That's why, again, people don't understand why Jerusalem is important to Muslims. It's literally the Islamic portal to heaven, right? And so the farthest one. And so there's that one reference, and there's one verse in the Quran that could be interpreted that one of the signs was that the moon splits, like the people of Mecca saw the moon split in half in the sky as a sign of the Prophet Muhammad. There's but it's an ambiguous verse that people say it could mean something else, right? But in general, the Quran says every time the Meccans ask for, you're a prophet, show us something, give us a trick. And the Quran's like, the entire universe is the trick. What do you want a miracle? The sky is a trick. The rain is a trick. I mean, this is all a miracle. If you can't see the miracle, the fact that you exist and the wondrous order of the universe, you ain't going to believe a miracle if you're shown it, right? But because it is so focused on the earthliness, it is important to remind people that God is not physical, and there is wonder and magic and story and possibility, and so Jesus represents that. Jesus, the Nativity, it's wonder. It's a sense that there is stuff that you cannot understand about the cosmos, and Jesus represents that. Like I said, he's the physical sign of it. He shouldn't exist. And so that's why the story is important. Prophet Muhammad is a historical figure, mother and father, lives. He's a prophet, he's a statesman, he's a husband, grandfather, he's a warrior, he's a king, he's all those things. Those are all human things, right? And that's his identity. He's human, he's fully human, right? And Jesus is human, but he's human in a way that's magical, which is wondrous. And you need that. You need that as a balancing thing. And so because otherwise you get a religion that's based pure materialism, and all the magic is gone. And the whole point of it, there's a verse in the Quran, it's one of my favorite verses, where it says God is describing the shadow, like how, look at the shadow, like when you're standing outside and the sun is hitting you and the shadow elongates and it changes in size as the sun. It's like God could make that stand still. He could just make that stand still. And the shadow is a sign. If you can't see that, that's a miracle that the shadow moves and changes, right? But it doesn't have to be that way. And so Jesus is the constant reminder. The material world is not all there is.
It's interesting. I'm sorry. I was going to say
That's
it sounds a lot more, very similar. Like, obviously, it's more similar to those non-canonical
yes.
Christian texts that we're comparing it to Christianity. But out of the two in the canon, it seems more similar to Luke in both tone and in subject matter. You know, they're both like miracles exist. It's kind of like this. They're very like Christmassy, you know, in the ways that we tend to.
Well, think about it. Who are the Arabs? I mean, Luke would have been preaching to Arabs, right? They were not Jews. They were the pre-Islamic Arabs were polytheistic, idolatrous, icon worshiping people that were also common in Roman Empire and Turkey and Egypt. I mean, these are the people that Luke would have been preaching to.